Yet again, the US Vice President Kamala Harris has secured enough delegates to earn the Democratic nomination as their presidential candidate. That was at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time in America last night that she announced this. She's also reported to be considering a white man as her running mate to boost her election chances. Can't be another woman, can't be another person of colour, has to be a white man. Because diversity politics is everything in democratic politics. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Meanwhile, yesterday the director of US Secret Service has been urged to, she's been urged to resign after admitting the assassination attempt on Donald Trump was the most significant operational failure in decades. Yeah, do you think? We'll play some extraordinary exchanges from that session in Congress. And also Rishi Sunak, he's going to carry on as the acting leader of the Tory party until, wait for it, November the 2nd. This is while a 3-month leadership contest takes place. The final 4 leadership contenders, assuming there are still that many in the race, will present their case to activists at party conference in September. Love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Is it wise to take that leadership debate so long, even covering the likely first budget of a Labour government? We'll talk about all of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much, as I say, for joining us. Delighted also to be joined today by Rear Admiral Dr. Chris Parry, CBE. You're a former NATO commander. You now work as a strategic forecaster. So we haven't got time for the rest of the show now with your job title and all your your extras. Because it's such a pleasure to have you in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. An awful lot to talk about. Unusually few military stories, but I know you have your fingers in many different pies. I mean, you've spoken to us many times about a lot of the big political stories. I'm just going to put the 2 questions out for our audience, one at home and one abroad. I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of these when we get to them. But Kamala Harris reported to be picking a white man as her US presidential running mate. We see this all the time. It's like, oh, well, if it's a woman, it has to be a man, it's got to be a woman, black, white. This idea that there has to be this, inverted commas, diversity all the time, but that whether this will boost her election chances. I just know what your reaction is to this, because I find it extraordinary that people are talking seriously about a woman who's only the candidate now because she was the vice presidential running mate for Joe Biden, and she was only the VP running mate because she was a black woman. They literally said it. They were only looking at women as vice president candidates and also looking at black women. There was no chance in hell that there was going to be anyone who wasn't of colour on that ticket back in 2020. But this obsession with the skin colour and the genitals of people as opposed to their brains and what they say and what their track record is and what their policies are, I find extraordinary. I want to hear from you what you think. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can send a WhatsApp to the same number. You can text us on 87222. You can tweet us on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. All those numbers are exactly the same for the other question I want to ask you about. British politics, yes, there's lots going on with the Labour Party, 2-child benefit cap, crime epidemics, or dealing with asylum migrants, etc., all of that. But the announcement that we've had that the Conservative Party won't elect a new leader until November the 2nd. We're going to go through the whole of the summer, another long summer of hustings and leadership contests and backbiting and infighting and you name it, same as we've seen a few years ago. How did that work out, everybody? I'd love to know your thoughts. Do you think it's good that it runs long? We get a chance for people to show their mettle in opposition, not just in government, when they've got that full support for their advisors and the government machine? Or do you think that actually it's crazy to leave Labour effectively with just an open door with no formal new opposition against them? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So do get in touch. As I said, same number, 0344 499 1000. Text 87222. Get in touch on X at TalkTV. Right then, Chris, so much to talk about. We're going to start with Kamala. She's won enough delegates. She's got more than half the delegates for the Democrat nomination. So it's sewn up. Even if other people challenge her, she's got committed. Biden freed them up. She's now 100%. She's going to be the Democrat nominee. $230 million in donations came in. All those donors go, I'm not donating while Biden is still running. He's not fit for the job. But what about this talk about her picking a white man as a running mate? You reckon you're on your chances?
I don't think Kamala Harris has got a chance of winning the presidential election.
Why not?
I think the momentum of Donald Trump is so great. I think the distaste for Kamala Harris is so great as well. When I'm in the United States, I hear she's incredibly unpopular. She's very clumsy when she speaks, and I'm afraid she's ideological in her approach.
And also, what has she done as Vice President?
Well, exactly that. And she's steered away mostly from anything that's going to get her into trouble. Biden has kept her in the background as well. Sorry,
again,
the Biden team has kept her.
Yeah, but again, why did they do that? And especially when he was starting to get more frail, you'd think they'd have been pushing her forward. But no, and they were, we know some months ago, they were looking at dropping her. Was there a way of dropping her as their VP option? And they say there wasn't. She was going to kick up a stink.
Yeah, I think there would have been accusations of racism and all sorts of things. I mean, you know, if I'm a politician, I would hope that I'm going to pick the best person for the job.
Yeah.
And I think all this talk of having white men as VPs, it just shows you how sick American society is right now.
Well, not American. I think the Democrats have a really big issue. They are obsessed with this thing. The thing I find really strange is obsession. It's going to be a first woman president if she did win. I agree with you. I don't think she is going to win. But, you know, and again, a woman of colour. We have that here in the UK. This whole, like, it's the first, you know, mayor of Cardiff that's of colour. Or oh my God, move on. We had a black American president. We've had women prime ministers. Women leaders are completely the norm around the Western world now. Can everyone just please move on that issue? And the issue of colour. Well, I'm sorry, that has been passed with 2 elections for Obama. It is extraordinary. People are still obsessed with this and obsessed with judging people based on these things. I'm with you. I find her totally and utterly unimpressive. I've got to be honest with you, and I know some of you may feel this about my voice. People are entitled to feel this way. I find her unlistenable too. I find the way she talks, I can't even do it. It's so painful. The facial expressions, the inane laughing and grinning. Why she hasn't got someone to train her out of that, to look like a more serious, a grown-up in the room. She's a 59-year-old woman who acts like she's a teenager on her first date, giggling at a boy who's shown interest in her. It's weird. It's actually, her behaviour is weird. I don't see the American public going, oh yeah, now we're seeing more of her. Absolutely, she's the woman who should be running the country.
Well, I think what I'd like to see is a combination ticket that says who can sort out Xi Jinping, Putin and all the other dictators of the world whilst trying to get the American economy back to where it wants to be.
And those things, again, matter for us just as much as they do to the Americans. And this is why we focus so much on the American election. I have great big fears, I mean, huge fears about Donald Trump and he does not believe in democratic processes. I don't think Biden's fit for office. I don't think she's fit. I think she's too useless. But I don't think she is, she hasn't ruled herself out with, various other actions over the years. But I'm genuinely concerned about Donald Trump and willingness to continue to support Ukraine. J.D. Vance, his vice president nominee, he doesn't even believe we should be helping Taiwan if China invades. I mean, we are in an incredibly dangerous time in the world. And we've got leaders who seem to just sort of act on a whim and don't understand the major geopolitical realities.
I've gone grey in the hair trying to tell politicians about geopolitical realities. The fact of life is, when you have an electoral system, you don't get the leisure to think about strategic issues. If you don't have to worry about elections, as in the dictatorships of the world, you can be strategic. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. And until we actually marry better our strategic long-term interests with our electoral system, we're not going to improve it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's much easier. It's much easier to take long-term strategic views if you are a demagogue who is in power for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Hi, Vlad. But that's the reality.
Yeah.
But we do need people who take this stuff seriously. There's never been an American president elected on anything other than an isolationist ticket. I'm going to worry about people in America. I'm not going to worry about the world. It's not our job to be the world's policeman, etc., etc. When America doesn't act as the world's policeman, you get issues like Syria. You get ISIS developing as a result. And it seemed to me that, when America steps off the world stage, other bad, worse players get involved, Russia, China and the like. But virtually every president gets pulled back into playing that world player role because they have no choice, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's whether it's dealing with Russia, whether it's dealing with China.
If you are a global superpower, you have to be involved globally, otherwise your interests will just go back. The problem is with America, it is self-sustaining. Just like if you look at Russia and China and Iran in the Eurasian continent, they can be self-sustaining. They can exclude. They're even saying they're going to exclude America and its allies from that space. So we are going back, as we've discussed before, Julia, to a two-block world now, between one led by America and the other led by, I'm afraid, the Eurasian autocrats. And we're back to spheres of influence. My thing is, anyone who hasn't got to grips with that, but also the economic impact of that. And we've seen from Ukraine the economic impact and the impact on democratic elections as a result of the cost of living crisis, when energy prices go up. We are an interconnected world. We saw this, with lockdowns in China. You close down a port in China, you can't get goods to do anything. The Red Sea right now. I mean, the Houthis are effectively making people go around the Cape instead of going through the Red Sea. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Let's also just talk briefly about the Secret Service chief yesterday. I did think this was quite the most extraordinary thing. Kimberly Cheetle, the director of the US Secret Services, who admitted that, what a surprise, that the failure over Donald Trump's assassination was the worst failures of, in decades of the US Secret Service. You think, tell us something we don't know. We've got a transcript, we've got a clip we can play a little bit later about basically US Congress members telling her she's full of the proverbial and being told she must quit. Do you think it's tenable for someone to say it was the worst failure of a Secret Service to enable a shooter to shoot? The US former president was shot, thankfully only in the ear. Another man died. 2 other people were critically ill in hospital. This was allowed to happen even though people alerted the Secret Service to this man on the roof with a gun. Is it tenable for her to continue in her job? If you take full responsibility, doesn't that mean you resign? Correct. Absolutely. She shouldn't be still in the job. I suspect she's staying in the job to defend her position because, as you know, in America, it's a very litigious society. So there may be other issues associated with that. But no, she can't be in the job. As the IRA used to say, we only have to get lucky once. And it's an open and shut thing. If you can't protect the president or a presidential candidate, then you're out of the job. It's that sort of casual incompetence that we're familiar with now. You can't play it on that stage. Absolutely. Again, it seems there are so many blatant failures that we could all spot within minutes as well. Let's also talk about some more news back here. The Tory leadership contest. They're going to open, basic nominations open, I think, from Wednesday, closing at the afternoon on next Monday. And then we're going to have numerous hustings like we had a couple of years ago. I hosted one of those hustings for Conservatives when it was whittled down to Rishi Sunak and to Liz Truss. Because Liz Truss obviously won that one in the end, and then of course it ended up not doing hustings and closing it all up in Parliament for Rishi Sunak. A lot of people feel that was the wrong way to do it. The party membership want their say. Having a leadership contest that takes that long and goes through party conferences, the final 4 candidates getting to address the delegates at party conference in September, and then having a ballot. I'm worn out just saying it all, and then announcing the result on November the 2nd. Rishi Sunak remaining as the acting leader, because he's formally resigned, acting leader until then. Is that the right thing to do? Oh, in my view, Julia, it's a sort of a case of bald men arguing over a comb. I don't even know what we think the Conservative Party is for at the moment, and I suspect that any caretaker is going to end up being an undertaker for the party. If it were me, I'd want a very quick decision now to find out who the leader's going to be. You've got a party and a membership that needs inspiration, it needs vision, it needs leadership. It needs to go to the conference in September fully in the saddle. But also the country needs an opposition that is effective and knows where they stand. But there is a massive battle within the party between the so-called moderate centrists and the right wing. Now, I'm of the view that the moderate centrists could actually be much happier in the Liberal Democrats or the Labour Party. Their idea of what is centrist now is basically Tony Blair. Well, when Tony Blair was very much on the left. They think that you're an extreme right winger if you think that people should go to prison for the full sentence they've been given, or that you shouldn't have open borders, or really, it's really basic stuff like that. And you shouldn't be obsessed with things like diversity politics. Now, it seems to me that there is this battle that's going to play out. I don't see it being resolved satisfactorily, because I think
that battle cannot be one satisfactory, because there really are two wings of the party in terms of the MPs, even though a lot on the so-called centrists lost their seats. But the Tory membership are very much more on the right of the party, are they not? Well, they're Conservatives.
Yeah, I mean, there's vital ground, as we say in the military, but also in politics as well. And you've got the Labour Party positioned actually to the right of the Conservative Party at the moment. So they look like an SDP type party, and Reform actually looks like the Conservative Party. So where does the Conservative Party play in this? Who are they going to move off the vital ground? Is it going to be the Labour Party, or is it going to be a Reform?
I mean, I think Labour will be laughing. They could present a budget in the autumn and they're not going to have a new sort of vibrant leader full of passion, you know, trying to make their mark. Reform UK, Nigel Farage, Richard Tysettle, they're going to be laughing their heads off as well, aren't they? They're going to be providing more of the opposition. But
I think, Julia, I mean, intuitively, who does one think, if one says who's going to be the next Tory leader, which name springs to mind? I don't think the public even know.
I mean, pretty well. Again,
this.
there's some polling. Again, I think there's some questionable polling about saying that Robert Jenrick is a front runner. Actually, the polling actually says Priti Patel is the first choice of many of the party members. But again, you need someone who will get the command support of the MPs, because you've got to have parliamentary majority support of your MPs and of the party, but also who will appeal to people who went off and voted for, or stayed at home, which is the largest percentage of former Tory voters, and people who went off and voted either Reform UK or Lib Dem or Labour. Well, the largest number of those is people who went to Reform UK.
Yeah, there is a huge number of people in this country, Julia, who want to be represented.
Yes, that'd be nice.
But the shop was empty.
Yeah.
There was nothing that appealed to anybody, and I'm afraid it was a failure of leadership. And I have to say, if you're going to take a new leader from the old leadership, then I'm afraid you're looking at the death of the party.
You don't think they're viable?
No.
Do you see Nigel Farage and his claim that they're going to be running as basically the opposition come 2029 election?
Interestingly, I think in terms of public perception, that's the case. I don't think in terms of parliamentary representation that will be the case. But there is a vital ground that needs to be fought for, and it is what Labour isn't.
Yes.
And that is.
Although it should be defined in a more positive way rather than negative.
Yeah.
Just finally, before we go to a break, I want to talk about this claim of a crime epidemic against women and girls. Police say they're recording over 3,000 incidents of violence every day. It's claimed that violence against women and girls in the last 5 years has gone up by 40%, well, 37% in just 5 years. And they're saying they want to treat it as a national emergency. And this is being led by the Deputy Chief Constable Maggie Blythe. He's warned that online influencers like Andrew Tate could radicalise young men into extreme misogyny. Now, there's no doubt there is an issue with violence against women and girls. There's also a big issue with violence against men and girls, largely all perpetrated by men, although there are men who are also victims of violence from women and women as well. Here's the thing. Do we genuinely believe that violence against women and girls has gone up by 40% in the last 5 years? I don't find that remotely believable. I can understand that reported crime has gone up as people are more open about talking about it, and it's more acceptable to come forward, and we're saying it's not acceptable to come forward. But I mean, I just don't believe these statistics.
Well, Julia, I think it's a combination of things, and people need to explain themselves, don't they? First of all, you're right. I think more is getting reported. There's more support systems to enable that to happen. We've also had a massive increase in population over the last period.
Yep.
So numerically, you're going to have more typical crimes and that sort of thing. I don't think enough research has gone into the social reasons why this is happening, the rise of the internet, pornography, the availability,
that's a massive issue,
all that sort of thing. I think there's also a cultural issue. I mean, I come from a generation where violence against women was considered by men to be unmanly. You know, it wasn't.
Well,
it wasn't the sort
I mean,
of thing
you say
do.
that, but I'm going to guess, and knowing your age, that at that time when you were growing up, actually, it was completely legal and considered normal for men to hit their wives. Yeah, gave her a backhander. She was out of order. Yeah, fair enough. Have another pint, mate. Genuinely,
but
that would not be. There's no normal man right now who would say, yeah, gave my wife a slap last night because she was out of order, and everyone else wouldn't be. What on earth have you just said and done?
But Julia, I have to say...
But that was the norm. 40, 50 years ago, that was the norm.
But peer pressure was such in those days that if you saw that happening, you would sort the guy out. And he would then be...
Except the police didn't for years, domestic violence.
Correct.
I mean, women are perhaps more likely to come forward about it. Is there also an issue, and we've seen this in many countries in Europe, where there's been mass immigration, particularly from... And again, hello, Ofcom, I'm happy to provide you with the figures. The figures are very clear for all of the countries in Europe that have seen a large increase in migration from North Africa and the Middle East, where cultural attitudes towards women and towards violence towards women and sexual violence towards women are vastly different from the Western world. I know, it's a surprise to all of us, apparently, that we have seen a huge increase in violent crime and sex crimes against women in places, Germany, France, Italy, Sweden. Would that, we've had a huge increase as well in this country. Would it be possible that that has had an impact on the figures here?
Oh, most certainly. I mean, it's what I said at the beginning, Julia. We need more objective analysis. These sweeping statements about epidemics and everything like that.
I don't think that helps anything.
Doesn't help, does it? So we need objective analysis that is not tainted by ideology or issues associated with racism or anything. If a certain section of the community is responsible for something, let's say so and let's deal with it.
Exactly. I mean, again, I just classing it as a national threat to public safety.
It's ridiculous.
I don't know what that... These are just sort of statements and sort of hysterical statements. I don't think they actually do anything to help anybody. But also ignoring the fact in terms of, we talk about, 2 women a week are killed by partners. Women tend to be victims of crime from their supposed loved ones,
nearest
their
and dearest.
husbands, boyfriends, partners, or ex-partners, or fathers or stepfathers. It is, it's very rare that they are victims of crime outside, actually, of the family unit. But men are far more likely to be victims of crime on the street, elsewhere, and to be murdered. They are far more. So I mean, we need. I don't really like it being talked about in this way.